A ship reportedly carrying Russian fuel is on its way to Cuba, a move putting Donald Trump's sanctions to the test as the island nation faces a deepening energy crisis. According to a Bloomberg report, the ship Seahorse is set to arrive in early March, carrying much-needed fuel to Cuba. Cuba is facing the worst energy crisis, falling short of fuel critical for cooking, transportation, and power generation. The available electricity has plummeted since the beginning of the year, and satellite images found the level of power at night down by almost 50%, the report added. The vessel Seahorse received supplies in a ship-to-ship transfer off the coast of Cyprus and is likely carrying nearly 200,000 barrels of Russian gas oil. Gasoil refers to diesel-type fuels used in transportation and power generation. The Bloomberg report said that it was unclear whether the Seahorse will be able to break the American blockade, which has resulted in the seizure of 9 ships involved in the transport of sanctioned oil. The U.S. military's presence in the Caribbean has choked off much of Havana's oil supply. Pressure on Havana has been mounting since late last year, when the American forces seized a ship carrying Venezuelan crude to Cuba. After the capture of Venezuela's then-president, Nicolas Maduro, in January, the American administration swiftly ordered the interim government left behind to halt shipments of crude to Cuba. Trump also threatened tariffs on any nation that supplies Cuba with fuel, leading Mexico, a steady supplier, to cut off shipments as well.
Cuba is right now a failed nation, and they don't even have jet fuel to get for airplanes to take off. They're clogging up their runway. We're talking to Cuba right now, and Marco Rubio talking to Cuba right now, and they should absolutely make a deal because it's truly a humanitarian threat. And we have a lot of great Cuban Americans, and they're going to be very happy when they're going to be able to go back and say hello to their relatives and do things that they should have been allowed to do for a long time. I'm very interested in the people that are here that were treated so badly by Castro and the Cuban authorities. They have been treated horribly. So we'll see how it all turns out. But Cuba and us, we are talking. In the meantime, there's an embargo. There's no oil, there's no money, there's no anything.
If a deal isn't made, would you consider an operation like the one in Venezuela?
I don't want to answer that. Why would I answer that if I was? It wouldn't be a very tough operation, as you can figure. But I don't think that'll be necessary.
Cuba, which doesn't produce much oil, heavily depends on imports of fuels or crude to run its refineries. Russia, for its part, has come under deeper international sanctions over its 4-year-long war on Ukraine, and both US and European nations have stepped up moves to seize tankers from the so-called shadow fleet that helps keep sanctioned barrels flowing. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday met Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez in Moscow and reaffirmed his support for the island nation.
Esteemed Mr. Minister, we are well aware of just how incredibly challenging it has been for the Cuban people throughout all these years, indeed for all these decades, during every single decade of Cuba's independence, as they fought for their fundamental right to live by their own sovereign rules and to steadfastly protect their vital national interests. And now we find ourselves in a particularly sensitive period, marked by new sanctions. You are fully aware of our position regarding this. We absolutely cannot accept anything of this nature. And the position of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been articulated openly, clearly, and without any ambiguity.
Regarding the bilateral relations between us, they are certainly developing and developing on the whole in a very positive way.
I would like to especially thank the Russian solidarity that was also expressed by Mr. President and by the Russian government, by its foreign minister, firmly and consistently, regarding the tightening of the blockade against Cuba, and more recently concerning the energy siege that causes suffering to our people and creates difficult situation for our economy.
Russia has already started bringing thousands of its citizens home from Cuba. This is no ordinary travel disruption. This is a full-scale repatriation operation unfolding in real time as Russia scrambles to bring thousands of its citizens home from a Cuba gripped by an aviation fuel crisis. Moscow's Civil Aviation Authority has confirmed that 2 major Russian airlines are now prioritizing evacuation flights after severe jet fuel shortages left aircraft unable to refuel on the island. What began as logistical difficulty has escalated into an urgent extraction effort. Rossiya Airlines, owned by Aeroflot, has revised its entire flight schedule to ensure the evacuation of Russian tourists currently stranded in Cuba. Nordwind Airlines has followed suit, suspending regular services and operating one-way return flights out of Havana, Varadero, Holguin, and Cayo Coco. Officials cite difficulties with refueling aircraft in Cuba as the driving force behind the dramatic shift. Without reliable jet fuel supplies, airlines cannot guarantee outbound and return operations, forcing them to pivot entirely towards repatriation. The Russian Union of Travel Industry estimates that at least 4,000 Russian tourists are currently in Cuba. For many, holidays have abruptly transformed into uncertainty as airports struggle to sustain international departures. Cuban aviation authorities warned earlier this week that jet fuel would not be available at international airports for up to a month. The announcement effectively triggered a countdown for foreign carriers to extract their nationals before operations grind to a halt. Russia's response has been swift and strategic. Rossiya has organized multiple one-way flights to Moscow and confirmed that all operations to Cuba will be suspended by late February. Refunds are being offered, but the immediate priority is clear: get Russian citizens home. Nordwind Airlines has adopted a similar approach, focusing solely on outbound evacuation flights from resort hubs popular with Russian tourists. The message from Moscow is unmistakable: safety and return come first. The crisis is rooted in a deepening energy shortfall on the island. Cuba's reliance on imported oil has left it exposed, and the halt in Venezuelan supplies earlier this year has intensified the strain. As jet fuel reserves dry up, the aviation sector has become one of the first visible casualties. Canadian airlines, including Air Canada, WestJet, and Air Transat, have also cancelled services and deployed empty aircraft southbound to retrieve passengers. But Russia's coordinated repatriation stands out for its scale and urgency. For Cuba, the implications are severe. Tourism is a lifeline for the island's economy, and the sudden withdrawal of international carriers threatens to compound an already fragile financial landscape. For Russia, however, the priority remains singular and immediate: extract its citizens, stabilize the situation, and reassess routes only when fuel security is restored. Amid repatriation of Russian tourists from Cuba, U.S. President Donald Trump bluntly declares that Havana is now a failed state under mounting pressure.
Speaking aboard Air Force One, President Donald Trump declared that the United States is actively negotiating with Havana as the island struggles under a White House-imposed oil blockade. He added that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is leading direct discussions with Cuban officials and urged Havana to strike what he described as a necessary humanitarian deal. The administration has tightened trade restrictions, citing Cuba's ties with Iran, Russia, and China, and has warned it will punish any nation that sells or supplies oil to the island. The impact is already visible. Multiple airlines have suspended service as sanctions threaten aviation fuel supplies, disrupting international travel and compounding economic strain. For years, Cuba relied heavily on oil shipments from Venezuela under the leadership of Nicolás Maduro, but that lifeline has now been halted. The result is an energy squeeze with ripple effects across healthcare, tourism, and everyday life. Trump insisted that Cuban Americans would welcome a deal allowing freer movement and reconnection with relatives on the island. He also signaled strong opposition to what he described as decades of mistreatment under Castro-era governance, saying he is closely watching how the situation unfolds. Despite the mounting pressure, Trump stopped short of openly endorsing regime change, though he remarked that if such a move were considered, it would not be a difficult operation. In the meantime, he said plainly, there is an embargo. No oil, no money, no anything.
You're warning Cuba to make a deal. What does that deal look like? What do you want them to do?
Cuba is right now a failed nation. They don't even have jet fuel to get for airplanes to take off. They're clogging up their runway. We're talking to Cuba right now. I have Marco Rubio talking to Cuba right now, and they should absolutely make a deal because it's really a humanitarian threat. And we have a lot of great Cuban Americans, and they're going to be very happy when they're going to be able to go back and say hello to their relatives and do things that they should have been allowed to do for a long time. I'm very interested in the people that are here that were treated so badly by Castro and the Cuban authorities. They have been treated horribly. So we'll see how it all turns out. But Cuba and us, we are talking. In the meantime, there's an embargo. There's no oil, there's no money, there's no anything.
If a deal isn't made, would you consider an operation like the one in Venezuela?
I don't want to answer that. Why would I answer that? If I was, it wouldn't be a very tough operation, as you can figure. But I don't think that'll be necessary.
Mr. President.
International reaction has been swift. Last week, Mexico dispatched 2 ships carrying 800 tons of aid to Cuba, with further shipments planned to address urgent humanitarian needs.
We have stated that Mexico is doing everything on its part to be able to generate a dialogue that allows within the framework of the sovereignty of Cuba. Because this is extremely important, because it is furthermore our fundamental principle, the self-determination of all people, to generate the necessary conditions for a truly peaceful dialogue. And also that Cuba, without any other nation imposing sanctions, can receive oil and its essential derivatives for its daily functioning and its everyday operations. We are sending different kinds of aid, different kinds of support. The ships are arriving today. As soon as they return, we're going to send more support of various kinds, and we are insisting that Mexico can act as the state, the nation that opens its doors for this dialogue to unfold. Evidently, it depends on the parties reaching an agreement.
Meanwhile, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel sharply condemned Washington's actions, accusing the United States of attempting to strangle the Cuban economy through tariffs and coercive measures. In posts on X, Diaz-Canel described the blockade as unjustified and politically motivated, framing it as an attack on Cuban sovereignty.